So, welcome to the Treasury Elite Entrepreneur Series. I would like to thank all our viewers and members for supporting this noble cause of Treasury Elite, whose main objective is networking, knowledge sharing, and mentoring. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Abhishek Goenka, founder and CEO of IFA Global and Treasury Elite. We bring in one stop Treasury and FX solutions for companies across India for the last 16 years. And today we have Mr. Paras Chopra. Paras is a founder and chairman of Wingify. With a background in machine learning, Paras started Wingify in early 2009 to enable businesses to design and deploy great customer experiences for their websites and apps. He's a gold medalist from Delhi College of Engineering, and has been featured twice in the Forbes 30 under 30 list India and Asia. Welcome, Paras. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Abhishek. Thanks for inviting me. I'm doing great. Hope you're doing great as well.
We are doing awesome, Paras. Glad to have you today as a part of the Treasury Elite Entrepreneur Series. In the next few minutes, we would love to know about your experience, about your entrepreneur journey. So, Paras, I asked this question to everyone. I think the one common thread which I could link with a lot of global CEOs would be they are not just doing this for the money. What keeps you excited every morning to get to work? Or if I may ask, what is your why?
So I think for me, it's the core motivation is really about learning. I do feel businesses are a fantastic playground for you to learn a lot, especially about people, about products, about technology. So yeah, I keep my curiosity satiated by running a business wherein doing different experiments, launching new products, playing with new technology. There is a lot of freedom to express yourself. So that's a core motivation, and of course, being an Indian company with global clientele. I mean, we have clients over 90 plus countries. Another motivation is to be able to create globally admired products right here from India. So we keep asking ourselves, whether we can be world class in what we do. So matching and exceeding global standards, which can be quite high for software and SaaS. So that also excites us, where making sure the quality is top notch. It just requires a lot, and that what is very exciting.
Excellent. So experimentation and playing around in business, that's any entrepreneur's dream. And I think we all have seen that path that every day there's a new day. Every time you meet new people, new products, and new nationalities. I mean, 90 countries is a pretty wide,
Yeah.
different expectations of the product. That's really awesome. So, Paras, you know. You have had your shares in ups and downs. Would love to know some of your milestones and learnings in your entrepreneurial journey. Also, I understand that Wingify is probably your fourth attempt towards entrepreneurship. Love to know about the other three, and also how did you progressed over the last 11 years?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, you rightly said this is not the first attempt. Nothing works out in first attempt, especially when it comes to businesses. So I've been toying with starting businesses ever since I was very young. And even in my college, I tried a couple of attempts. Some were, and when you are in college, your world is entirely composed of college student worries and motivations and so on. So my startup attempts were really to do with that. For example, one of them were about music bands. So in college, you have a lot of music bands. So I created a platform for college music bands to exhibit their music. Another one was around helping students get jobs and projects from big corporates, and then some just various kinds of similar projects which were to do with college student worries. So all of them didn't work out, obviously, and Wingify was an attempt, I mean, where I reflected and figured out what were my learnings, why they were not working out. So I kept iterating with each startup, trying to improve what was the failure mode for those startups. And I realized that what I was doing was to build stuff without caring about marketing, go to market strategy, and essentially how would I get customers. So with Wingify, I started learning marketing. I didn't have a background in marketing. I'm an engineer. So that was my introduction to marketing because I was literally failing at marketing. And then Wingify just became about marketing. So we make a marketing tech product, which is a conversion optimization A/B testing product. So essentially, in the pursuit of trying to learn from my failures, I stumbled upon the opportunity that became Wingify. And I guess the biggest milestone was the first customer, the first few customers where when rubber hits the road, I mean, before revenue, everything is a big idea. You really don't know whether this will work or not. But I think the first few customers give that concrete validation that someone out there really cares about what you've built. So that was an amazing feeling. And then I think growing from there has been, I mean, there's just so many lessons, every day there is some sort of a milestone. But say, for example, working on second and third product, wherein the success is again not guaranteed. I mean, every time it's amazing where if one product is successful, it doesn't mean that second and third will come easy. So after the first product, also I think having fair share of failures and successes, they were milestone in themselves because they're humbling in the sense of telling you, I think, reconfirming how much luck is involved when it comes to business success.
Scaling looks very glorious, when you are raising funding. But if it comes with huge pressure and expectation, of course, it impacts your quality of life. What's your message to the young entrepreneurs? You just mentioned that, the average pay is less on a long run. But, these entrepreneurs, just coming out of college, everybody wants to run a startup. I think I was talking to one of the venture capital guys and he was saying some 50,000 startups are there in the country, out of which I think less than 5% have got funded or something like that. So what's your message to the young guys who feel that raising money is kind of a big achievement and
Yeah.
often PR
So mhm.
more
I
important
think
than real
raising money and PR is really very analogous to this thing where people say my son has gone to IIT or my son is doctor and all that. I mean, it is a bragging right in the sense of it's very easy to get confused that you're successful money in the same way you're successful if you've sort of gotten into a prestigious college, but it's not necessarily so. A lot of people into prestigious colleges end up suffering. Maybe they're in a wrong job, maybe they wanted to become an actor, but their parents forced them to become an engineer and so on and so forth. So I think it all starts from really introspecting deep down why you're doing what you're doing. I'm not saying raising funding is a bad thing. Maybe you are motivated by money. Maybe you like spending money, making money, and so on and so forth. But in my opinion, most people are not like that. I think most people are not lavish spenders, are not like big spenders. And if that's the case, chasing these external sort of symbols of success, I think comes with a lot of frustration because you feel you're giving up an authentic part of you. So my message is for people to really introspect and know why they're doing what they're doing. Are they doing startup to solve a particular problem? Are they doing it to create an amazing product? Are they doing it because they want to improve their community? Are they doing it because they believe in employee happiness and so on and so forth? So introspecting that core motivation will give a lot of confidence to be able to reject these external signs of success. Otherwise, I think you'll get confused that your competitor got X amount of money or got featured in newspaper and you didn't, and that will feel like you're unsuccessful. But I think success have a lot of dimensions,
correct.
and these are probably not even the most important dimensions.
What are your thoughts, Paris? Now you are very well connected with the young entrepreneur community. You are active on Twitter. What do you feel about the rise of unicorns in India? Close to, I think, 15, 16 we have come. and almost every month we are doing 2 or 3. I don't know. And where do you see the action in the digital and the technology sector? Any specific opportunities you see going forward?
Right. I think on unicorns, it shows that Indian market is maturing. I think traditionally Indian equity markets have been dominated by traditional businesses, coal and oil and even services like Infosys, TCS. But I think with the startups like Zomato and so on, it just shows that there is a growing appetite for investing, appetite for appreciating and investing into technology businesses, and I think that's a great thing. That's a great thing for maturity of our ecosystem, and it will be a motivator for a lot of other startups wherein they realize they don't have to go to say US or sell or list somewhere else. Listing within India and growing within India, serving Indian market, I think that's the perfect thing that should happen more and more in future. So
Mhm.
I think it's a good thing. Uh, but again, I mean, particularly the unicorn thing where $1 billion is a mark. I have an issue with that because nothing practically changes from $900 million to $1 billion, but
Correct.
yet it's some sort of an arbitrary sort of a mark. But anyway, as far as digital opportunities concerned, I mean, it's a very difficult question to answer because practically in all sectors there is so much of opportunity that you can't just pick and choose. I mean, I do feel India will evolve just the way say US and Western countries have evolved. Our incomes are rising. We have more and more sort of digital access. Our fintech is probably the most sophisticated in any country out of the world. So I think there's no barrier per se that I see where our country will not be as advanced and will not grow to the level that US and Europe have grown. And if you see that in terms of say GDP per capita, I think there's a lot of growth still remaining. So you pick practically any sector out there, and I think there is ample amount of opportunity for the next say 10, 20 years.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm sure in the next 2, 3 listings, I think things will become more clearer. And if these
Yeah,
price invaluations
yeah,
even stay to 80% of what the listing price were,
yeah.
are going to be for now. Paras, I want to ask, or probably you can share one of the examples of one of the events in your life when you had taken a very big risk. It could be in business, it could be hiring a resource, or it could be a product. And how do you feel about it right now? And as entrepreneurs, we all do get multiple emotions of failure, regret, self-doubt. How do you how do you fight with that?
Right. So I think I'll probably take the example of when I moved from Delhi to Pune along with a good chunk of team. So uh, I moved here 5 years back. I've grown up in Delhi, set up Wingify's headquarters. Was in Delhi. I mean, now we are all remote, but we started in Delhi, grew the company for 250, 200 people, and then practically moved to Pune with 20, 25 people. And I didn't know anyone in Pune. So it's not like, I had connections there. The reason I moved here was because I lived in Delhi, so wanted to be spending time and at some other city, and also from uh, say a pollution perspective, lifestyle perspective. So made an Excel, started ranking cities, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Pune, and so on, and practically really from an analytical perspective, selected Pune because it came up on the top with a list of factors, and just packed the bags and moved there. So I would say it was a risk because I didn't know anyone. We never tested how would running two offices versus one office would work. What would happen to our culture when there are two teams sitting at two different places? At one places, whether the company will get negatively impacted, positive. So a lot of unknowns were there, And I think in retrospect, I think I took that decision. I mean, it was a good decision because I think I grew because it obviously wasn't smooth, right? I mean, no decision of this nature is smooth, but the challenges that came about and the whole process of coming and setting up as a new base, I think it was so challenging that it made the company better because we tested lots of things, whether one person can run the entire company on itself, whether our communication is so good that we can do it even without being in the same room, and so on and so forth. So in retrospect, it was a blessing in disguise, but it was a big risk, I would say. And again, the same way I did it is the recommendation I would have for entrepreneurs to manage their emotions. I think when it comes to making a decision, being very rigorous and being unemotional is the way to go, where you list down the factors that are important in your decision. And rather than getting yourself, because there's so many cognitive biases, just as a simple example, you're interviewing a leader and he or she has a cheerful personality that immediately biases you towards hiring that person. And if you don't have a structure for, say, your interview, you might not even end up asking some of the important questions because you're so enamored with their personality. So that's what I mean in terms of having a framework for your decision making, especially for big decisions. And the framework has to be thought through before you get into actually deciding anything. But once you've filled in the framework and you've sort of entered your data into it, whatever decision comes up next, I think you have to make peace with it and just rally behind it as if it's the best decision you could take, because after you take it you're sort of married with it in a practical sense. So having regret is useless. You can't do anything about it. So really trying to make yourself believe that it's the best thing that could happen to you is the way to go.
Correct. Great. Faraz, so a lot of CIOs and VC private equity guys would be listening to this, and I would like to know. Uh, my last two questions to you is: first is there's a tremendous change in the way the young population are looking at investments. You just mentioned about Reddit. We all know how things are globally because it's a different cult altogether. Real estate was something that today also when I talk to my old clients or my parents, real estate is a big thing, and every time real estate is still preferred asset class, but the young generation doesn't feel like that. There is options of various alternate asset classes. How do you think that things are changing, and what's a decent asset allocation if you have to do for yourself? How would you do it?
Yeah. um, I think it really starts with knowing yourself. Again, I think that's important, but there's no perfect asset allocation. It depends on who you are, your goals, and I think most importantly, what's your relationship with money. Some people uh, they really want to see a number that doesn't go too down or too up. They want a very stable. I mean, they have a fixation with the portfolio number, and it scares them if the number goes up and down. For them, obviously, investing in things like equity markets would be a, I mean, I wouldn't say risky. I mean, equity markets, if you take a broad index, are perhaps the least risky thing you can do. You can call it volatile. So confusing people confuse being volatile with being risky, and I think that's a wrong thing to do. Uh, Giving someone a company a debt can be more risky than investing in a broad index fund, right? Company can fail and your money can go, but by investing in index, you're literally investing in the economy. So unless the country fails, your money is safe, but it'll be more volatile. So if you're okay with volatility, I mean, which I am personally, where I'm almost 90% is equity, and that too broad index funds. That's what I follow for myself, but I don't think there's a general recipe for everyone. I do feel within the asset classes you choose, diversification is the free lunch you can have. So not putting your eggs in the same basket, but going as broad as possible is the way to.
Correct. Lovely, Paras. Thanks so much for your insights. about your journey at Bingify, about your how you connected the dots and the team connected the dots, and how did Bingify got formed, and what's your innovation culture, and especially very interesting message for the young startup community. It's an exciting world. Stay grounded, be focused, leave everything else. Super.
Right.
Lovely, lovely,
Thank you,
Pankaj.
Abhishek. Yeah.